Thank you so much, Todd. It's been absolutely incredible having the opportunity to help put this event together and work with such an amazing team. Couldn't have done this without you, Lynette, and Jorge, Jay, Julie, and Charlie. And I'd also like to thank Sandra Ponce de Leon and Jim Cooper for all their help with the panels and who will also be moderating later today. Welcome and thank you to everyone here on day 2 of Earth Summit. We're excited to have you joining us today, and we're looking forward to hearing from an incredible lineup of speakers and having an exciting day of inspiring conversations ahead. To kick off day 2 of Earth Summit, we'll be hearing from a panel moderated by Jim Chu, CEO of Untapped Global, as they discuss how we can draw inspiration from Africa as the fastest growing continent paves its way forward in sustainable development. Thank you. Jim?
Thank you, Emmy. Thank you, Todd. Pleasure being here, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody who's joining us from around the world. Today's panel for AILA is taking inspiration from Africa for innovation to make our planet healthier and more sustainable. And I have the honor and pleasure to introduce a number of great entrepreneurs and investors who are actively involved in not only spearheading some of these innovations, but also investing in them. So without further ado, I'd like to first introduce some of our panelists, and then we can jump into the topic. Why don't we start with Andrew Reicher. Please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background with innovation in Africa.
Hello, Jim. Hello, everyone. Thank you. As you can probably hear from the accent, I'm British. I've been involved in finance and investment since the 1970s, and I've been investing in Africa since the late 90s, so now well over 20 years. I began my investments in Africa through the British government's development bank, CDC, where I was responsible for the infrastructure investments, and a majority of those investments were in electricity. And at the time we started, we were concerned about the fact that electricity access levels in Africa were minimal. Even today, well over half of the people on the continent don't have electricity at home. Well over half the people on the continent don't have a power connection in their houses. I've pretty quickly moved on to not just the providing any old electricity, but concern about climate change, which affects Africa and poor Africans disproportionately. And so since 2010, I've only been involved in renewable energy and providing services to people in the informal economy and businesses in the informal economy, as well as to the conventional energy grid. So for that period of time, 11 years, I've been a business angel investor in early stage companies, bringing clean tech services to people in Africa, and that's extended out to a whole range of other related activities, basic services such as education, water and sanitation, internet access, e-commerce, and financial inclusion. So that's me.
So a pretty broad breadth of business innovations, technology innovations throughout Africa. Great, well, glad you could be here. Talash Huijbers in Nairobi, welcome.
Hello, everybody. My name is Talash, and I run a small company in Nairobi that focuses on producing insects as a sustainable circular alternative to fish meal and soy in animal feed. And now we also have insects for human consumption to replace meat. I have been doing this for 3 years now, so I think Andrew has been in Kenya or investing in Africa longer than I've been alive. So I'm very excited to be on this panel and give my take to what I think Africa has to offer the world in terms of innovation, sustainability, and circularity.
I think you just aged Andrew. That's very nice. Please don't age me, by the way.
No, you're still very young, Jim.
Yes, so it seems. And then young. We have Ghislain Irakoze. Thank you for joining us. Please introduce yourself and welcome to the panel.
Okay, thank you, Jim. I'm Ghislain Irakoze. I'm based in Kigali, Rwanda, and I'm founder and CEO of Wastezon. So at Wastezon, we are on a mission of leveraging cutting-edge technologies to create a waste-free world. Our product Wastezon app provides peer-to-peer platform services between recycling industries and households who want to exchange electronic waste. And so far, over 400 tons of electronic waste, equivalent to over 2,000 tons of carbon emissions, have already been transacted on our platform. So right now, we work with over 1,800 households in Kigali. And next year, we are planning to expand to regional markets, including Kenya, Uganda, and Ethiopia. And I'm really glad to be on this panel just to provide the African context in adoption, AI, and emerging technologies.
Great, glad to have you. And as you can tell, we have a pretty broad breadth of folks involved. We have the future of energy, we have the future of food, and we also have the future of waste. So hopefully, in the tight time frame that we have, we can cover quite a bit. So I think I'd like to start off with the first question as to what do we mean by innovation, and what kind of innovations can Africa bring to the table? And what I mean by that is, a lot of times when we say innovation, people think about new technologies and cutting edge technologies, and there sure is that in spades in Africa. But I see the potential oftentimes in Africa in innovating the business models to ensure that technology can be applied in a way that really makes a meaningful difference in the lives of the next billion. So I think we've seen a lot of that, both in Talash's business model, in Ghislain's, and certainly what Andrew has invested in. And so I'd love to hear from each of you on some of the top one or two most promising innovations, whether they be technology innovations or business model innovations that you've seen in Africa, and how they might be interesting or applicable for the rest of the world. I'll leave it open. Who'd like to start?
I can start.
Talash, please go ahead.
I think innovation is not just high tech. Innovation can also be low tech. We are taking an old technology and making it new. So we're using insects, which they've been around for very many years. People have been exploring different avenues, and we're using the insects to recycle waste. Another interesting innovation that I see coming out of Africa, again, is with low tech. So it's taking technology and making it accessible to millions by not having it necessarily, you don't need a smartphone, you can do it on we call them mlikamwizis, like phones that can be stolen easily, really cheap phones, using SMS-based technology, because that is a lot more accessible to more of the population compared to having to have a smartphone, having to have data bundles, having to have good internet connection. You can charge a little cheap phone using solar, but it take a lot longer to charge a iPhone using solar. So it's interesting to look at what low-tech innovations are working really well for Africa and how they can be applied around the world.
So I'd love to hear, I think, and everybody else would love to hear more about your business in particular. So how do you create insect protein, and how does that feed into the food supply chain, and how is it more sustainable?
Okay. So we are at the beginning and at the end of the food supply chain. We are the connection in between. So we are at the end because we collect daily around 30 tons of organic waste from all over Nairobi. And we take this waste and we convert it using insects into fertilizer, which goes back to the fields, and then protein, which goes back into the animal feed sector. It's more sustainable because it's done locally, meaning you're reducing imports, you're reducing travel time. It is environmentally friendly because we have the best input material, which is everything that is thrown away. And it is circular because we're helping close the food loop systems, and sustainable because we do it because of all of the above, and the fact that it's as nutritious as fish meal, and it is the same price as soy. So that is a win-win for our local economy.
So you're reducing the burden on the supply chain for humans and feeding the protein that you create to animals. But you also mentioned in our pre-talk that you will be starting a human insect protein line as well. Tell us more about that.
We started a year ago experimenting slowly with crickets. So what we see is that a lot of animal protein is still very expensive for most of the population. Animal protein is accessible if you're upper middle class, from upper middle class upwards, but if you're lower middle class towards more the poorest people of our society, it's not yet as accessible. And crickets are incredible because they're this big, and eating 20 grams, which is around 5 to 6 crickets, gives you the same protein boost as eating 2 or 3 chicken, as eating actually a whole chicken, if I remember correctly, because you have really high iron, you have really high zinc, and you have really high protein, which are the 3 things that people are most malnourished with. What we're finding right now is that we're going 2 ways. We're either hiding it in products that already exist, so baking it into cookies and cakes and into porridge, which is one of the most widely consumed staples in Kenya, or we're turning it into a snack and either challenging people to eat it or taking it to communities where insects are already eaten. If you look at Uganda, the biggest delicacy is a grasshopper. They swarm twice a year, and that is what is most commonly eaten. So we thought we can do the same thing with crickets. It's very interesting because we do get a lot of people who visit our farm, and we make everybody taste a cricket before they leave. And you can see when they're going to put it in, they pull a face, and then when they chew it, they're like, oh, it tastes like roasted peanuts. They're very shocked. I myself didn't know what insects were supposed to taste like, but I know that the insects we grow taste really good.
It was very interesting. And so I'd love to hear a little bit from Andrew on whether you've come across some of this in terms of insect protein in other markets, and what do you think about the applicability of something like insect protein in more developed markets? Do you think we're going to get protein shakes made out of crickets in the near future?
Well, we already do. I mean, here where I am in West Wales by the Irish Sea, I just Googled, there's a business called the Bug Farm, which is 18 miles from where I am, which is an insect-based restaurant. But it's to demonstrate exactly what Talash is saying, that insect-based food can be delicious, but they're also producing insect-based animal feed. And I know of a business in Paris, France, another startup, which has really taken off in a big way, which makes insect-based dog food or pet food. Pets need protein, and we've tended to feed them meat, and that's just crazy from an environmental point of view. So this business is, so insect-based protein is, I think, an incredibly promising technology that can grow astronomically, not just in Africa, but all over the world. If I could take the conversation in a slightly different direction, then yes, I'd like to hand on to Ghislain. We have 37 attendees. I'm just wondering, is there any way to get them all, those of them who know Africa or have visited Africa, to raise their hands? Or maybe even better, the ones that don't know Africa, to raise your hands?
Great idea, Andrew.
I'm looking down the list.
Quite a few that are raising their hands.
Yeah, so it's kind of a mix. But what I think you need to remember about Africa is Africans are not different to anybody else, in my opinion. They're exactly the same. I think if we approach Africa as a different place, we do it a deep disservice. But when we think about business activity or improving the situation of people, you can talk about technology, you can talk about markets, business, and money, but I think you also need to talk about society. And the way that society operates, for me, the thing that strikes me is that social organization in Africa is different to social organization in wealthier parts of the world, in that the informal economy is a much, much bigger proportion of what happens. In other words, people work for themselves. And Africa is the original gig economy, in the sense that people who work for themselves do a range of different things. So if you look at a family in Africa, they will probably live on a piece of land that they will farm, and they'll farm it for food for themselves. They'll farm it for food for sale in the market. Members of the family will go out and work for cash. A member of the family might be a teacher or a construction worker or a local administration officer. The people in that family might own a motorbike, and they would use that motorbike as a micro enterprise to transport goods and their neighbors backwards and forwards into the town. So Africans, particularly at the middle point of the income distribution and downwards, tend to have a range of different jobs. They work a bunch of different things, very long hours, but because they are entrepreneurs, there are probably 600 or 700 million entrepreneurs in Africa because they have to be. And when we talk about technology and innovation, Africa might not be at the cutting edge of basic scientific research, or indeed of engineering and technology research. But those 500 or 600 million businesses are a hotbed of innovation and experimentation. And they deliver some absolutely fascinating lessons for people who are trying to build businesses. Before I hand on to Ghislain, I just want to say the two things that if you're running a business in Africa, you have to figure out and are the most difficult. One is customer acquisition. How do you find and communicate and obtain customers? And secondly, it's finance for those customers, because there isn't a lot of money around. And very often, if you're going to sell things to African customers, you have to provide them finance at the same time. And that's your business, Jim. So I can come back with the specifics, but I'd like Ghislain to tell us what he's doing before I monopolize the conversation.
Well, thanks for that interlude, and that very important. Let me just make a really quick comment on yours and then pass off to Ghislain, which is, I think you see this in Talash's model as well, the importance of decentralization, of giving the resources, whether that be money or materials or know-how, to the smaller entrepreneurs to be able to run their own businesses. And I think we see that in Talash's model in terms of how she's decentralized the gathering and processing of waste. And I'd love to hear how Ghislain has done this, and I'm sure there's an element of decentralization as well, to your point, Andrew. Over to you, Ghislain.
Okay, so basically at Wastezon, we are just providing a platform. So it's a blockchain-backed platform that assists households to sell their electronic waste to recycling industry. So we operate with some recycling industry based in Rwanda and even internationally. So one of the most key decentralization feature we have is just providing transparency in e-waste trade. So we have a traceability feature that assists households to detect mineralogical content in their electronic waste and price accordingly. And we also assist them in organizing logistic between recycling industry with them. And but the end goal is actually helping them to gain like money from their electronic waste. And just touching on overall solution around the continent, there are quite a lot of emerging technologies around the continent. Specifically, I would touch on complex solutions such as AI deployment in South Africa, where there's localized client care and professionalism for telecom, utility and providers. AI-enabled decision-making in energy distribution in Nigerian remote areas. And all those initiatives, I think they are setting the pace for the possible impact the continent could gain if there is a mass deployment of emerging technologies, AI, IoT, and blockchain. And just touching on Andrew's point about localization, localizing solution into social context, I think it's one of the crucial elements in ensuring mass scaling of innovations around the continent. We have seen that in absence of R&D in Africa, the application of AI deployed in Africa tend to originate from outside of the continent and hence they lack contextual relevance, particularly in respect to cultural and infrastructure factors. I think clearly there is a need to invest in R&D, but even though many governments are actually taking that into their priorities. But in the meantime, I think for companies for international startup and companies expanding around the continent, I think they should establish partnership with local startups and organizations for assistance in contextualizing their solution in local and socioeconomic settings.
So I heard a call to action there for those in the AILA community to see who is interested in applying some of the tools that they're building to some of the businesses on the ground, such as Ghislain's and others. Is that what I hear from you?
Yeah, sure. Basically, I think we really need to take into contextualization of the solution. So whenever you're bringing a solution in Africa, there's a local context that needs to be taken into consideration. Yeah.
And I think that's a really important point in the sense that, you know, a lot of times we subconsciously or unconsciously or in a biased way think that technology will solve everything. Applying that technology to the local context is extremely important. And oftentimes it requires understanding on both sides. What's cutting edge on the technology side, coming from the US to other places and of course in Africa, but also how to apply that technology in a way that is socially, culturally, and economically relevant for that market. And oftentimes we as technologists miss that. And so I think it's quite important to understand the local context, the technology, and then create a business model that truly works for that market. And so going to your call to action, Ghislain, I think it's important that we do combine the two sides. Those like you who understand the local context and local markets very well, but also people like those in the audience who may be able to bring some incredible solutions that they've already developed, perhaps intended originally for a different market, but can be applied in the African context. Great, thanks for that comment. I want to go back to you, Andrew, a bit on the first question I asked, which is, what are some of the technologies, aside from insect protein, aside from a better waste supply chain that you've seen that could be applied internationally to other markets?
Well, I think a fascinating example that Jim, you and I both know, which is when we look at e-mobility in Africa, the transition to electric vehicles, both motorbikes and four-wheel vehicles, cars, vans, trucks, and buses. Africa is kind of different. And those differences can transfer themselves back to developed markets, and that the tech can be brought in from those developed markets to help with the use case solution. So what do I mean by all of that? The company I'm talking about is called Opibus, opibus.se. In Africa, mass transit is in two forms. Taxis tend to be motorcycles. People use motorbikes for hire, and they take passengers. There are taxis, traditional four-wheeled car-based taxis are for rich people. The masses use motorbikes, and Opibus is developing a very, very robust, simple electric motorbike for Africa. There are, of course, electric motorbikes in the States, in China, in India, but they've run on smooth highways. They are not designed to carry 300 kilograms of people and luggage, and so the shock absorbers.
The use cases are different.
These take an awful lot of punishment. So you cannot bring in a ready-made original piece of equipment from China or the States or Europe and run it on African roads as a motorbike taxi. It doesn't work. So Opibus is developing, first of all, its own motorbikes. Secondly, when you look at the four-wheel vehicles, the African car and truck market is mostly imports of pre-owned vehicles. Something like 80% of the cars on the roads in Kenya are brought in from Asia. They're imported, they're 7 to 10 years old. People can't afford to buy new cars. So how do you go to electric vehicles if new electric vehicles are more expensive than new internal combustion engine vehicles? And the Opibus answer, again, is different. It is to convert existing pre-owned cars with a tech pack that replaces the engine, the gearbox, the exhaust system with a battery pack, a drivetrain, and a control system. So that if you look at Opibus's website, you can see how you can show up with a minivan that is being used as a local mass transit vehicle, and Opibus will take out the drivetrain, but leave the rest of the vehicle as is, and they will install an electric drivetrain. The batteries come from China, the drives come from Switzerland, and the software is largely developed in the US. So that's an example of tech coming from everywhere and being integrated into a solution that is specifically designed for African conditions. And I have a view that that could potentially go to America and Europe, because we talk about the energy transition and the just transition. There are billions of vehicles, many of them that are essential work tools for people who have to get around, who work people, who run a van, and they're being told, guys, you have to go electric. Their van might be 10, 15, 20 years old. A new van will cost them $50,000, $60,000. They don't have that. And what we need to do is to make them electric without costing them more money than they would otherwise be spending. And the answer to that, of course, is retrofit, conversion of, on a mass scale, of the existing vehicle park to electric drive. Now, the OEM auto manufacturers, that is deeply subversive to their business model, because they exist, the Teslas of this world, to sell you new automobiles for $50,000, $60,000, $70,000. Not a $5,000 or $8,000 basic conversion of a 10-year-old Chevy. And I think that if we're going to carry everyone with us across the world on mobility, vehicle conversions at mass scale are a really interesting concept. And Opibus is leading the way. So maybe that's something we'll see in years to come in other parts of the world.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting one. And when we're obviously the converted, Andrew, you and I. But, you know, I want to touch on something you mentioned earlier. You know, Africa is the original sharing economy, I think were the words you used. And I think that's an important aspect to think about, because we think we're incredibly cutting edge when we talk about Uber and transitioning to the sharing economy. I think Africa has the opportunity to go directly from analog sharing to digital sharing that has incredible implications for how some of these innovations get adopted. And I think something such as finance is incredibly important. The ability to take that cost and spread it among many different people. And over time, I think we potentially see some innovations on that in Africa that can be eventually applied to the rest of the world. So I personally think that in order to finance or in order to empower the next billion entrepreneurs in Africa, we're going to see some great innovations that can be reapplied back to the rest of the world in terms of how everyone else is empowered financially and resource-wise for their businesses. So thank you for that, Andrew. I want to move to some questions from the audience as well. There's a question from Jeff in the audience for Ghislain. How has the incredible prioritization in Rwanda around creating a digital economy, data use, contributed to adoption of AI and other innovations? Ghislain?
Okay, so I think I would say it all around attached to the policies on the ground in Rwanda. And as you all know, Rwanda is the second fastest growing economy in Africa. and we ranked the second for doing business in Africa, just globally 29. And we have already set up a 4G LTE network coverage, which is almost right now extended at 95%. And we are second in the world in ICT promotion. And the government had already set up 2025 ICT strategy that includes new bodies that were launched by the government, including national data center, cybersecurity infrastructure, and this institution is responsible to coordinate all data regulation in Rwanda. And it was really quite successful, as right now they have already adopted over 6 policies on the ground. And Rwanda government has also e-procurement system that assists investors on the ground in procurement. And just in regard to innovation, I'll say like AI deployment still on raw level, still comparing to other African countries, like the giants, Kenya, Nigeria, South Africa. Rwanda is still catching up, but I would say in terms of like building innovation ecosystem, there's really a great work being done by the government and even ecosystem builders. One of the key areas that the government should put more effort, I would say, is actually attracting investment. They have already built a great environment for investors, but the numbers of rounds of investment raised by local startups are still on low level. And I've said that's one of the areas that needs to be, really strengthened just to push forward the AI deployment or other innovation deployment.
Oh, thanks for that. And I encourage anybody else who has questions in the audience, please feel free to type them up in the chat box and we'll address them to the panel. No, great for that. I want to get back to you, Talash, in terms of data and AI, and also back to you, Andrew. What kind of opportunities have you seen in your business or in other parts of East Africa that might benefit from AI expertise, data expertise, and how can local organizations like yours help implement those solutions in your markets? Either one of you can take Andrew or Talash, take that question on.
Talash, you go first.
Since it's actually very interesting that you bring up that point, there is a very interesting startup in Nairobi. I want to say it's Apollo. And what they do is that farmers can take pictures of what's going wrong on their field, send it in, and then AI expertise will look at everything that's happening and see if it can come up with a solution for that, together with combining that with them being connected to other farmers who've had the same problem. So that is a very interesting way that AI is appearing in agriculture. The other thing is what you said, data collection. You now see a lot more data being collected. For us, it's very important to know what waste is coming in, what time, what this. And with data collection, you can bring a lot more monitoring onto the entire food value chain. So what we see is, we told one of our biggest clients is that we see them bringing in mangoes and bananas that could, have an extra 2-3 days shelf life. So then they were able to go back onto their process and see what is happening there, what is going wrong, that we are being delivered actually good product. So it's interesting to see how we are collecting data and how it's influencing the rest of the chain, but also how just data collection in general, what is happening on farm level, are they using the right fertilizers, are they using the right pesticides, is affecting the entire chain, because you see farmers pouring 10 to 20 times the amount of fertilizer onto a field. And then when they can actually see that, okay, you see why you're purchasing 50 bags instead of 5, you can impact not just the cost, but then also the productivity at cheaper and better soil health for the fields. Also, interesting that you brought up, OP Bus is, their vehicles are very, very silent. The first installation that they did in Kenya in the Masai Mara is very, very silent, but also very interesting that there's OP Bus, there's Power Hive, there's Auto Truck, and they've all taken a different approach to how to electrify vehicles. So OPBus, it's a built-in system. They have charging stations. PowerHive is a battery swap. And AutoTruck, I don't know them that well, so I'm not sure what they're doing. So it's interesting to see how also all these companies are combining more off-grid electricity with electrifying their vehicles.
Yeah, I mean, thanks for that comment. So I just want to jump in with two comments. I mean, I think from a, Andrew mentioned this earlier about the informal economy and what a strong presence it has. You know, for sub-Saharan Africa, most countries, more than 60–70% of the economy is driven by the informal. And the thing that I think many of us know, but perhaps haven't seeped into our brains as to how it impacts, is that they're all going digital. That entire informal economy is going digital more and more so. And so there's a tremendous amount of data, whether that's through M-Pesa transactions or through other pieces of data being collected around usage, around transactions, around stuff that AI can easily be applied in a meaningful and very insightful way. So I would really challenge the audience here at AI LA, sorry, to see, connect with folks on the panel here and others in Africa to see how their innovations can be applied in that context. There's just so much going on. There's a lot more to be done. And on the second piece around around OPBus, yeah, I'm quite excited for the various different business models that are being experimented on. And personally, I think this combination of a sharing economy and how we solve the e-mobility charging problem, for example, especially with off-grid energy, because unlike the US or Europe, there isn't that established energy infrastructure in place. So off-grid energy, including solar, will play a much larger role in the off-grid charging infrastructure solution in Africa. Andrew,
yeah, for example,
go ahead.
PowerHive are in a very remote village, and they've connected 5,500 households to their little off-grid stations, and it's working very well. The people have electricity, they're able to farm better, they have schools are then run on power, you can have computer lessons, you see the effect all the way throughout the chain.
Gotcha. No, that's a great example. Andrew, did you have a comment, or did you, there's a question for Talash. I'm happy to revert to Talash as well.
Well, look, if I jump in, for Talash, the motorbikes that PowerHive is running for battery swaps are OPBus motorbikes. So OPBus is supplying the bikes, PowerHive is doing the charging, and the batteries are getting swapped out. They're very easily interchangeable. So
hopefully we can finance them one day.
of companies working together. But I wanted to come in on another example, and it's in the agriculture space again. The average farm size in Kenya is about 2 acres. And many farms are much smaller than 2 acres. There's an awful lot of manual labor in watering crops. People dig wells by hand and they lift the water by hand. And another company that I've invested in is called SunCulture, which manufactures and distributes a solar-powered water pumping system. The heart of that is a smart battery, because the power demands of water pumping are very specific. The column of water has a very, very high inertia. And so initially you need a very, very large amount of power to be delivered to get the water moving. And then the power supply the power draw from the battery can drop down. That battery is called Climate Smart. And what's interesting is it's connected. So what SunCulture have begun to do is to put very cheap $5 RF soil sensors in the farms of their customers. And there are tens of thousands of those customers now. And the data that SunCulture is getting on soil moisture is enabling it through AI to produce weather forecasts. And SunCulture's weather forecasts are better than the National Weather Service in Kenya.
Fantastic.
They are the best quality weather forecasts you can get. Sun Culture is also able to deliver the kind of farmer information that Talash was talking about. And the biggest challenge, I think, or one of the biggest challenges to the question on the Q&A that Jeff posted is connecting the dots, because all of these ideas are terrific, but they're only a single point in what is a long chain of requirements to improve conditions for people, whether they're farmers or they run small businesses. And the important thing is to connect the dots. Another comment I want to make before I pass on the floor is another challenge is very often we're talking about relatively small transactions. A Sun Culture water pump sells for less than $1,000. An OP bus motorbike is $1,500. You've got these solar rooftop systems that are going in all over the continent that go down to as little as $50 or $100. And yet people still need to borrow money to be able to afford that, and then pay back the cost over time as the equipment allows them to earn a higher income than they were before. So I talked about providing finance. It's really, really important that the data in the finance system is very, very agile and effective. You're talking about huge numbers of small transactions, huge numbers of customers, and very small companies. So they have to be able to handle data in an effective way. And they collect enormous amounts of data. So there's an enormous potential there to use that data for other purposes, to understand better what's going on. So it's a two-way process. And the final thing I want to say is another example, the classic example of where tech from Africa is taking over the world is mobile money, using mobile phones and SMS messaging technology to move money backwards and forwards at very, very low transaction costs. You can shift as little as 10 or 20 cents from one person to another using mobile money, and it costs virtually nothing. And that technology started in Africa and has migrated to other parts of the world.
And I think it can also play a key role in how we finance the growth of the continent as well. Well, thank you very much for all that. And just for context, I want to read off Jeff's comment or question that you just addressed, Andrew, but also allowed Talash to comment on it. In your experience, Talash, what is the right balance between government involvement in supporting, controlling innovation, and private sector flexibility and entrepreneurship?
Yeah, when Andrew was addressing the key factors that affect entrepreneurship and innovation in Africa, I wanted to bring up government. Government can or be very enabling or very restricting. So in Kenya, if it is a new industry, it is very hard to get the government on your side. But when they're on your side, it's easy to get them to work with you to develop the regulations. They're very open and friendly, but to get to the point where they're open and friendly is not easy. I think Ghislain has a completely different view in Rwanda. I know Kenya is one of the hardest countries to do business in. Rwanda is a lot easier. We had to have 16 permits before we were officially fully legal. And some of them are hard to attain. Some of them people don't understand what's going on. If it doesn't fit a certain regulatory box, it is not going to work. We now have a law that I don't fully agree with. It is a digital tax. So already you take the M-Pesa transactions, which sometimes the cost is not the most friendly, but that also allows other competitors to come into M-Pesa's space. And then you add on top of that a digital tax, which makes the cost then of entrepreneurship of a business that you could be running digitally a lot higher. So government it's definitely a tricky one. I'm curious to hear what your take is in Rwanda.
Ghislain, would you like to comment on that? Yes, thank you.
Okay, here in Rwanda, just registering a business, just a quite small process, just 2 hours, and it's done online. And yeah, no, like Rwanda, just taking into consideration regional context, in Rwanda, we are competing with other regional giants like Kenya, Uganda. So Rwandan government has to position like itself as like one of attractive markets, especially by establishing a neighboring environment. And I'll say that's one of the key things we are competing with the Kenyan government, just to establish an environment where an investor will be like almost a king. And that's what the Rwandan government is just putting more efforts. We have already set up some digital enabled policies, including data center, like the new data center that was established last year, and the new fintech sandbox, which is quite innovative to attract regional startups to operate in Rwanda. And one of the most intriguing things is that Rwanda is positioning itself as the best ecosystem where you can actually try your pilot your product. So I would say, like, in terms of market, Rwanda is so small. So you just need to kind of get a neighboring environment where you can test and prototype your product. And after that, you can actually expand to other big market in the region, like Kenya, Nigeria, and South Africa.
Thanks for that comment. And go ahead, Talash.
Yeah, I just want to say, although it is not the most enabling environment, I do think that the Kenyan government is very innovative. We were one of the first countries to ban plastic bags. They now want to ban the little Coca-Cola bottles. The Nairobi metropolitan area are creating a law that says if you're a big company, recycling and sorting has to be done on site. No more dumping. Your plastics have to go to a recycler. Your metals have to go to a recycler. Your organics have to go to a recycler. So the government is also very good at creating this sustainable circular environment and then forcing companies to do it. The biggest problem is they can decide today that they're going to change it, and then you have to comply by tomorrow. That is the biggest downfall of the Kenyan government.
Gotcha. Well, thank you for that context. Thank you for the questions for the audience. And I think we're nearing the end of our time. So I'd like to ask for last words from the panelists on the question of, well, let's say in 30 years, what is Africa going to be known for from an innovation perspective? Talash, would you like to jump off? Would you like to start first?
Yeah, we call Nairobi, or I think this is general of Africa, it's organized chaos. So in this organized chaos, there is still a lot of chance to develop innovations. For example, for us, waste was very accessible because all the waste right now is being dumped. In Europe, all the waste goes to people who burn it and make biogas or make energy already. So I think the environment is very enabling for innovation. I think Africa can be a leader in very many things. E-mobility can be a leader in, we hope to make insects a commodity and have Africa produce most of them. Like horticulture came down south, the same thing is going to happen to insects. And then, yeah, enabling environment in the organized chaos.
I love that. Enabling environment in the organized chaos. Thanks for that, Talash. Andrew?
I think a point that really should be made is that Africa is 54 different countries. It's an enormous continent. It is very different from one part of the continent to another. So to treat Africa as a single entity is a mistake. You need to look at each country, its history, its culture, its politics, as well as its economics. What will Africa look like in 30 years? Of course, it will look incredibly different to what it is today. It is an enormous opportunity. The population of Africa will more than double in the next 30 years. So we're looking at over 2 billion people. Africa is a continent of young people. It's a continent of excitement and hope and imagination. And as Talash says, chaos and confusion. if anybody tells you they know what it's going to look like in 30 years, don't listen, because they don't know. But it will be a very exciting ride, very worthwhile. It's the other problem with Africa is it gets a terrible press. The only things you ever hear about Africa in the mass media are bad. It is not all bad, although there is obviously a lot of massive problems that need to be addressed. But it's a place of hope and joy and love, and it's just a great place to do business. I'm so happy that I discovered it late on in my career, and I intend to pursue it till the end.
Hear, hear. Thank you for that, Andrew. And to you, Ghislain.
I think Africa, what could look like in 2030, just take into consideration that by 2035, Africa will have almost the youngest workforce, almost the biggest in the world. I actually envision a workforce ready, especially in tech industry, where we will actually distribute a big number of software developers around the world. But this actually really needs, governments have to rethink the education systems and restructure them to fourth industrial revolution skills. But I really I believe that by 2035 we'll be ready, just contributing a tech workforce around the world. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Thank you, everybody, the audience and the panelists, for your time. And have a good rest of the conference, everybody. Bye-bye.